Getting your work optioned is a long shot. And I'll start with that statement. But it's not purely the result of luck. You can improve your chances of seeing your stories be adapted for other media. And this webinar is going to offer tips on how you can do that. Who am I to be offering such tips? I'm an independent writer and author. I've been freelancing nonfiction for decades. I won't tell you how many decades, but a lot. I write mostly about history, crime, often the history of medicine. My first optioned work happened in 1991. That was a magazine article, and there have been 13 or so other options since then, including 5 options that have gone on to production as either a movie, a play, a podcast, or a documentary. I'd like to start with some terminology because I've been using the word option. What's an option? An option is a legal agreement between 2 parties. One party is the rights holder. That's you as the writer of something that might be adapted. And the other party is somebody who wants to adapt your work to another medium. And the option lays out a specific period of time, usually 12 or 18 months, during which the producer, the adapter, has the exclusive right to get the foundation of a production going. So that means to get a script written, financing, pull together cast and crew, find partners in the production, etc. And also, very importantly, the option agreement often lays out future agreements on things like the purchase price, if the adaptation, the production moves ahead, something is produced, and a slew of other important future details. Now, there's something else you may have heard of called a shopping agreement. Shopping agreements are also out there. They're generally worse for us as rights holders because shopping agreements give the other person, the producer, the right to work with your story for a mandated time, but usually without any commitment or financial compensation, and I might add, or without much hope of an actual production. So between the two, an option is the much preferable kind of agreement to have over a shopping agreement. So what do you need? What are the things that need to happen for you to have success or better luck at least in having your work optioned and then perhaps ultimately produced? First of all, you need patience. These option and adaptation deals take forever. It took 12 years and 3 separate options for my book, The Nazi and the Psychiatrist, to eventually get to the screen. It'll appear, actually, it hasn't gotten to the screen yet. It'll appear in theaters, I hope, last I heard, at the very end of this year, November, December, in a movie called Nuremberg, starring Russell Crowe and Rami Malek. And then other stories like the movie Oppenheimer, that was adapted from a much awarded book, and that took even longer. So you need patience, and you need to have other projects, other things going on while you may be pursuing options. Another thing that I recommend as a tip, don't try to copy other successes or follow trends in the entertainment business. Write what intrigues you and put that out there for optioning. A basic part of all this is that what you write has to be a narrative. In other words, a story, either nonfiction or fiction. And original and unimaginable yet plausible stories work best. Stories that are a lot like other things that have already been produced do not work as well in my experience, because after all of the time that has elapsed during which this happens, that trend, whatever it is you're following, will be long in the past. Write stories with scenes. Write stories with conflict between characters, or feature a character who has an inner conflict that can be expressed visually. A conflict that's simply going on within the character's head is often difficult to express visually. Now, one thing as print and online writers, one thing we have to get past is seeing the publication of our work in a magazine or in an online publication as the end game. It's not. It's just the first step if you want to see your stories advance to adaptation. So be a protector and advocate of your own story. And let it live in multiple media. So that means, what that means is do not sign all rights contracts or work for hire contracts. Absolutely don't, because when you do, you lose control over your copyright, which means you lose control over your ability to authorize adaptations. In addition, in your contracts with publishers, don't let them have even non-exclusive rights to your stories, performance rights. It gets in the way later on. If a producer wants to option your work, they don't want to know that somebody else out there also has the non-exclusive right to authorize an adaptation. So if you're presented with a all rights or work for hire contract, try and negotiate that away. It's very possible to negotiate, learn how to negotiate. And if you need to, if they won't budge, then you should not budge either. And you should walk away. There are always better print and online publications for your stories than ones that will demand all rights or a work for hire arrangement. So the print and online appearance of our stories are just the first baby steps in our story's life. It's the way I look at it is that we are a caretaker of the story, and it's our job to do everything we can to make sure that conditions are right for it to get out there in some other medium and in some other form. When there is interest in your work from someone, if somebody contacts you out of the blue, or before that, get representation. Representation is crucial because option agreements are long, full of legalese, and loaded with landmines for writers as they're originally offered to the rights holder. The option agreement for my book, The Nazi and the Psychiatrist, which has been made as the movie Nuremberg, was considerably longer than the book publishing contract for the original work. So what kind of representation? At a minimum, you need a performance rights agent if someone approaches you. And also, often, you will need an attorney specializing in entertainment law. So how do you get a performance rights agent? It's not an easy question to answer, but the best way to get a performance rights agent for your work is through a literary agent, a referral from a literary agent. If you have one. I understand many of you do not have one. And some people try the method of approaching performance rights agents, mainly those who work at the large agencies like UTA and the others. I've tried that. It usually doesn't work. Those people are too flooded with stuff. So the alternative is to let them, along with producers, find you. Publish your work where a lot of readers will find you. Promote your own work on social media and promote your own work in the public media if you can. That means try and interest journalists in writing feature articles about you and your story. Get reviews of your books, etc. Make it easy for people to find your story and to find you. So in the long run, as far as getting your work published, where a lot of readers will find you, in the long run, how much you get paid for publishing your work in those print or online media, which most of us have been trained to think is the end game. That's where our income comes from. That's inconsequential in the long run. This is a long game. How much you get for the article really, in the big picture, doesn't matter a lot. If you're starving, it does matter a lot. But if you're thinking of the starving is an immediate need. If you are thinking in the long term, what you're looking for is the quality of the publication and not how much they pay. Once you license an option to someone, celebrate and forget about it. Keep busy doing other things. The process takes forever. If you obsess about it, focus on it too much, you'll get bogged down in it. You won't pay attention to other stories that you can bring up and write about that can possibly be optioned or get attention in this way, and it'll mess you up. So forget about it. And I'd also like to plug here a Google Groups group that I manage called Profit from IP. IP means intellectual property. So this is a group of writers and a few people working in other creative fields like songwriting who are interested in discussing issues of intellectual property, option agreements, things like that. If you are interested in joining this group, let me know. You can reach me at the email address, my email address that's at the top of the chat bar, and then I'll send you an invitation to join the group. It's a worthwhile group. I've learned a lot from it. And then you'll also see right there at the top of the chat the same, some other information that I mentioned earlier, other contact information, and links to some of the work that I have optioned myself. So that is a really fast, condensed version of this topic. I'm sorry, there isn't time for more, but there is time now to for me to take your questions. And to repeat, I won't be taking questions through the raised hand function or through the Q&A function, but just through the chat. So I'm going to go through the chat and lots of highs from people. Thank you very much for being here. Do you not see, someone asked where the links you referred to, do you not see them at the top of the chat bar? I do. Well, and then Janefa says, I had a story optioned years ago by a director who wanted to radically change it. So I said no. How can I retain the integrity of my work? This is a really good and important question because um, um, because integrity. Okay, I have thoughts about this that are different from many other writers, clearly, but I believe that I had my chance with this story. I had my chance with my book. I wrote it the way I wanted to, and nothing anybody who adapts my work comes out with is going to change that. So I am excited and happy when a producer or somebody else is inspired to use my work as the beginning point for something that's different from what I wrote. So for example, with my book, The Nazi and the Psychiatrist, and the movie Nuremberg, Nuremberg is quite different from the book. It's about only a small slice of time that I cover in the book, and there are also some changes to the historical record. It's not 100% historically accurate. That doesn't bother me because it's a product of entertainment, and I don't think anyone should watch movies based on historical sources with the idea of getting an accurate, a 100% historically accurate film before them. So So Janeffa, my advice to you is to question whether that integrity is important. I can understand how it would be more important for writers of fiction than nonfiction, but question whether that is critical. Yes, the Q&A is turned off. I turned it off. Sandra writes, I know this from friends who are actors. Their productions take years to come out, and one agent. At my point, I'm looking at leaving a legacy, not seeing my work done. What should I tell an heir to do? This sounds to me more like a question for a lawyer than for me. There are things you can do to pass your copyrights and make your agreements valid so that your heirs will benefit from them, but I'm not the person to give that advice. Tom says I'll be dead by the time, if the time ever comes to get optioned. Well, you never know, Tom. I would say don't assume that and stick with it. Karen, I'm submitting my poems to the New Yorker magazine, and my question is, what is your experience with publishing poetry? Zero. I have none. I suppose there are poems that have been optioned and turned into products of other media. I can't think of any at the moment besides the Iliad and some of the great epic poems. So sorry about that, Karen. Someone is asking that I post the links again, so I will. So there they are at the bottom of the chat. Um, this is from Ashley, great advice about self-promotion and publishing. If I was writing a book that I kept envisioning on screen, about three-fourths way through, I decided to rewrite it as a pilot script, episode outline, and show Bible. I still wonder which is a better avenue to get the story on screen, published book to adaptation or pitching screenplays. I don't know the statistics on that, Ashley, but one thing I do know is that if you are writing things like pilot scripts, episode outlines, and show Bibles, at the end of that, if you do not have anything produced from it, you don't have anything that anyone can read and enjoy. If you write an article, if you write a book, fiction or nonfiction, that is published, and even if it isn't published, someone can take that manuscript and read it as you have envisioned it. So that's why I think going from literary property to the screen is a good way to go. If this is from Tom, if one has a self-published book that one believes would make a good film, how should one try to get it optioned? Well, if a book is self-published, it can still be reviewed. You want to get it out there into the media. So see if you can get reviews, see if you certainly use social media to the full extent you can, see if you can get someone to write feature stories about you and the book, if that's applicable in any way. You just want eyes on it. So do whatever you can, even get it out there. I was going to say get it out there for free, maybe not. But your job is to get it out there as much as possible. Any advice on the best route? This is from Kylie. The best route for an autobiographical story. Those stories are no different from any other in the context of what I'm discussing. So all the things that I've been talking about would apply to autobiographical stories. Stephen has mentioned that recordings of this presentation will be available to everyone in the lobby. So remember that if there's something you think you may have missed. So as far as my email and the other links go, I did repost that, and I hope you can all see it now. Great. Tony says, I'm interested in your intellectual property group. What you should do is send me an email with your email address in it, and then I'll send you an invitation. Who do you contact for option? This is from Robert. And what do you send them? Well, ideally, you will be, two things will happen. You will either be contacted by someone, and they will tell you, they will have seen what you've written and tell you what to send them, or you'll be working with a performance rights agent who will advise you on that. As I said earlier, trying to contact performance rights agents and even more so producers out of the blue is the longest shot of long shots. And so I don't recommend it. Mary writes, this is going to sound like it came from a witch who casts spells. Oh, I hope not. But from what I've seen, authors have to learn to use and believe in magic to get their screenwriting dreams to come true. I'm all in favor of magic. Mary, if you know spells that help, that's great. But I'll remind you that we're not talking about screenwriting here. We're talking about adapting your other written work, getting those adaptations done. Screenwriting is a different topic and a different path, I'm sure. You're not a witch, just an editor. Okay. Tamar says, I have a relative who is finalizing his book that is a memoir. Is this the best format? If he also includes historical context about his godmother, Marlene Dietrich, and his grandfather, a famous composer for her films. Any suggestion? Your relative should make it the best, strongest, fastest moving narrative possible. And so whether it's possible to create a strong narrative using that historical content and all that other information, which certainly sounds interesting, that should determine whether that information is in there. Cats. Owen says Cats was optioned. Yes, there's another poem. T.S. Eliot never saw a dime. Well, he was dead, and I don't know if he would have benefited from a dime. Have I heard of Story Rocket? This is from Penelope. No, I haven't. Why don't you put in the chat what it is? Annette says, what do you think of bicklist.com? I don't know what it is, so I don't have any thoughts. And maybe you could tell us in the chat. Would it, from MK, would it increase the chance of your story being optioned if you adapt it into a screenplay yourself? I know writers who have done that. That's an excellent question. And a small number have had their works adapted, have their screenplays produced. Many have not. I don't know, and I don't know that path. The path that I know is from printed work, whether it's an article or a book, essay, something, a fiction, poem, something like that, to adaptation. So I'm sorry I can't answer that. Just a few minutes left. What title or credit did you get on the film based on the Nazi and the Psychiatrist? I will have two credits in that movie. One credit is right next to the screenplay credit, which is by James Vanderbilt, adapted from the book by. So there's that. I also have an executive producer credit. You may wonder, what does executive producer mean in this context? It doesn't mean very much. I didn't do anything in the production. I was on the set for a couple of days, but did not do anything to earn that credit, but it was part of our agreement. And I think that's true of a lot of executive producer credits. Bet Ka says, if a film is based on a true story, a deceased friend, do you need permission even if a name is changed? I don't know the answer to the music part of your question, but you do not need permission to write about someone. What you may need is their cooperation, in which case they'll implicitly give their permission. Dead people are fair game. They can't sue for libel, slander, or anything else. That's one reason why I like to write a lot about dead people. Tom asks, were you a swinger, Jack? That's off the topic, Tom, so I'm not going to answer. What about, Daniel asks, doing a cartoon before as a scenario? Well, I don't know about cartoons. I have no experience, but I do know people who have made trailers of their books that couldn't hurt, and other video type moving presentations. It couldn't hurt. Whether it helps, I'm sorry, I don't know. Owen says, did the producers consult with you, and how common is that? Yes, in the case of Nuremberg, the Nazi and the psychiatrist, I did review and comment on multiple drafts of the screenplay. I think that is somewhat common. I don't think it's all that unusual. So my comments were not about the quality of the screenplay. It's a very high quality screenplay, and I recommend the movie when it comes out. But more about characterizations, what might make a characterization stronger, drawing from what I know about the factual story. Penelope, is it a format for story writers to allow producers to look over specific format? I'm sorry, Penelope, I'm not sure what that means. Maybe you can elaborate on that. Karen, how can you track down earnings that were promised to you but never received? That sounds like an accounting and a legal question. I don't think I should get into that. Ashley, are only nonfiction or historical articles optioned, or is it also common for short stories? Oh, it's very common for other kinds of material to be optioned. Fiction of all types, articles and essays and books of all types, memoirs are very frequently optioned. So Lori says, if I want to write about a famous person, but I don't think I would be able to get rights to their specific story, is it okay to write something inspired by their story? This is a hard question to answer quickly. You don't need to get rights to somebody's story to write about them, especially if they're well known, a celebrity. So I'll leave it at that. We're past our time, so either this thing is going to cut off automatically, or you may have other webinars to move on to as part of Medium Day. So I'm going to stop there. If I didn't get to your question, use the email address I provided to ask it to me one-on-one, and I'll do my best to answer. So thank you, everyone, for being here. And I've appreciated your interest and your very interesting questions. I hope this was helpful. And good luck in your endeavors, whether they lead to adaptations or not. Thank you. Bye-bye.